Benvenuti. Welcome to the History Center's third video in our digital Italian Heritage Month series. For those of you who have attended Italian Heritage Day in the past, you've probably visited the Weisbrod Kitchen Classroom on our third floor, where we've had cooking demonstrations for you to learn a little bit about Italian-American food culture and recipes that you can try at home. Because of the pandemic, we are going to talk a little bit about Italian coffee culture, and I'm going to invite our special guest, Sam Patti, to talk to us about La Prima Espresso and the ways that it maintains Italian coffee culture here in the United States. Many of you probably have family recipes that you make at home, and those recipes may have been modified because of changes that were made once your ancestors came to the United States. When Italian immigrants first came to the United States, their cuisine was foreign and their ingredients were not easy to find. Because of that, we saw foodways industries develop in our region to service the Italian American community. And once mainstream Americans tasted our food and realized how great it was, we saw that Italian cuisine became very popular in the United States and turned into what we understand it to be today, Italian American cuisine. Now, as a part of Italian cuisine, they have their own coffee culture, much like many different countries in the world have their own coffee culture. And the coffee culture that came from Italy is central to the idea of espresso. Espresso means on the spur of the moment in Italian. And it was an invention that was created in the late 19th century in the industrial areas of Milan and Turin. We're looking at a Gaggia espresso machine, which was made in the 1950s and purchased and used at Poli's restaurant, once located in Squirrel Hill. For many of you who grew up in Pittsburgh, you probably have memories of dining at Poli's restaurant and maybe even enjoyed a cappuccino made by this machine. Espresso is something that has become very common in the United States. And what's very interesting about our region is we have some businesses that continue these Italian traditions and offer them for American audiences. So let's have Sam Patti from La Prima Espresso explain to us a little bit about the coffee that he makes and how it's connected to Italy. Well, welcome everyone. Today we have with us Sam Patti, who is the owner of La Prima Espresso Company here in Pittsburgh. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about Italian coffee culture and how it came here to America. So Sam, to start, for the people that don't know you, could you give us a little bit of background about how you started La Prima?
Well, sure. I was teaching out of state, came back to Pittsburgh, needed a job. I'm going to tell you the truth. I was supposed to get this little job at Duquesne University, and I called over there to see what was going on with this job, and they said, "Oh, we couldn't find you. We hired somebody else." So I thought, "Ooh, maybe it's time to step away from education and figure out what I'm going to do." I had been introduced to coffee at home. My family always drank a lot of coffee. I knew a little bit about Italian coffee or cafe latte from my grandmother. And so I thought, well, from my travels in Italy and all the bars, I thought, man, I think Americans would really like this cappuccino stuff. And I knew that it was going on the West Coast. So I decided that I would do that. I grew up in a bar room. I understood the dynamics of a bar. And my first idea was to sell espresso machines, which we still do. And we have a couple of different bars, and I just jumped in. I thought the Strip District was the perfect place to put the bar because I wanted to sell both wholesale and retail, and that's at that time where the restaurateurs would come to buy their product. So there was fish, there was Pennsylvania macaroni, there were restaurant equipment places. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this. And it's one of those entrepreneurial stories. You need a job, you have an idea, and you say, I think I'll just take a swim at this, and I did.
And tell us a little bit about what makes the process you do with your beans similar to what we may see in Italy.
Well, as I said, I grew up in a bar room, so I understand the dynamics of a bar. So that idea of building community was very natural for me. That's what you see in the Italian espresso bars. And we want our coffee to at least reflect the style of the type of espresso and cappuccino that you would find in Italy. There's been a lot going on over the last 30 years about coffee, the first wave of coffee. You'll hear these expressions, the second wave, the third wave. We've tried to maintain our roots as an Italian style espresso bar. Again, that would be the type of single espresso, the type of, let's say, 6-ounce cappuccino that we serve. So we tried to stay true to that. The place reflects my interest in Italian American studies, my Italian heritage. I did a paper one time talking about restaurants and other small businesses as museums and reflections of Italian American culture in the United States. And I think that if you want to know about Italian American culture, there are pizzerias, restaurants, all different kinds of businesses that certainly reflect that. And we do the same thing.
And I think that's incredible that when you look at the fabric of our region and you look at these small businesses, you can learn so much about the history of the community by talking to the business owners and hearing the story of how they got into the business. Just as you said, could you tell us
Right.
where you grew up and where your family comes from in Italy?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Indiana, Pennsylvania. I've lived in Pittsburgh for over 40 years, but my sister still lives there. She has an Italian restaurant, her and her son. And so my family comes from Calabria and Sicily.
Well, for those at home who got the take-home kit, they got a sample of La Prima coffee. And I was wondering, to wrap up, could you give us any tips for how to brew a good cup of coffee at home?
Well, especially for regular coffee, I think there are two issues that are really important. And one is to use enough coffee. Over the years, for restaurants, for instance, for an individual restaurant pack, coffee used to be about 3 ounces. It's weaned its way down to 2.5 ounces, 2 ounces, less than an ounce. So you need enough coffee. And the easiest way to remember that would be for every 4 ounces of coffee, for every 4 ounces of water, 1 tablespoon of ground coffee. 4 ounces of water, 1 tablespoon of ground coffee. And of course you can adjust, but that's a good baseline. The other issue is to make sure that the water is hot enough. I don't think anybody usually cooks a roast beef in the oven for 2 hours unless they're making something like barbecue. So you have to have hot water. So you need water that's just off the boil. So if you have, let's say, a Pyrex pitcher, you fill up your pitcher with water, boil it. By the time you take it, let's say, out of the microwave and the bubbles go away, you're at the right temperature. So the right amount of coffee, the water that's hot enough. That would be that. Now that's for standard American coffee, sure.
Well, and that's great, because those are exactly the tips we're looking for, because I think some people are going to be coffee aficionados and other people are just going to be learning about some of these connections. So thank you for spending a little bit of time with us today. And I hope everyone gets a chance to sample La Prima when they come to Pittsburgh. It's an excellent brew. And Sam, thank you for everything you do to support the Italian American program.
Thank you for inviting me, and we'll see you again.
Thank you so much for joining us in this third installment of Italian Heritage Month. And next week, we will meet with Mary Farrow, and we are going to learn an Italian folk song.